We're up and running?
Yes, you guys are good to go.
So Lawrence is not asleep.
No, I'm awake.
We were taking so long to get this going that we both nearly fell asleep, but that's all right. I'd like to introduce you to Lawrence Ryan, and we are here at Monte Cristo in Junee, the birthplace of where you sort of grew up as a kid.
That's correct, yes.
Yes. So what we're going to do today is, this is probably, Lawrence and I have been friends for quite a few years now, and because of that, there's been a lot of time that we've chatted about things. I've stayed here a number of times. I've experienced a number of things. For those that don't know, Monte Cristo is actually Australia's most haunted house. It's an unusual place for a kid to grow up or be born into when your dad decides to buy an old homestead and rebuild it from a family that had it for many, many years. So I wanted to just give Lawrence the chance to, I would say, talk a little bit about his life growing up here. Mainly, he's, what I know of Lawrence, he's quite a private person, although he's very much in the public eye, and give him the opportunity to explain to everybody exactly what growing up in Monte Cristo was about, what sort of things he's experienced, etc. So maybe I'll start with that, Lawrence. I know you have other alter egos, which we'll talk about later, but here at Monte Cristo, growing up, what was it like as a kid?
Probably the most asked question, I would say. People always think it's a hard question to answer because I just look back at people and go, I don't know, what was it like growing up at your place? It doesn't seem different to me, and it's a little bit of an odd question because it was my home, it was our family home. So I suppose it didn't feel different to that other than being haunted, but it was back in a time too where it wasn't sort of readily or talked about as openly as it is today. Honestly, you go on, any sort of social platform, there's someone talking about spirits, ghosts, haunted locations, all sorts of things. Back when I was a kid, no one really talked about it, and it was sort of said in hushed tones, and it was sort of mentioned but not brought up. And as kids growing up, I'm pretty sure our parents didn't sort of drum that into us that we're in a haunted house, because I feel that'd be a form of child abuse at some point. But
pretty much,
yeah. But it was. I tell people, taking away the haunted side of the homestead, it was like being on a movie set. There was just always people around. There was always people interested in the house. There was always busyness. As a kid growing up, Monte Cristo was my spaceship one week. Next week, it was my fortress or castle for nights. The other week, it was,
BMX track.
BMX track out the front.
That's it.
It was like a playground. That's how I describe it. And having carriages out the back, you could relive that Western you just watched on TV by being a kid and having the cowboy hat and the guns and up on the carriage and pretending like you're trying to get across the plains, running away from Indians and all sorts of things. So it was very almost magical, I'd say, but I don't know. I just took it for granted that everyone could have that sort of adventure. But I'm one of those people that love imagination. I love doing things that are a bit fun, a bit exciting and that. And growing up at Monte Cristo just gave me the opportunity to be a kid, I suppose. Yeah.
Yeah, fair enough. But you were also the youngest, is that correct?
Yeah, 4 older sisters. You can feel sorry for me now or later. I don't care when you feel sorry for me. Yeah.
Having 4 older sisters.
Yeah, but there is a bit of an age gap between me and my next sister. So honestly, I grew up at the house as a kid, virtually by myself here. So I do remember my sisters being here in the earlier days, but sort of by the time I hit 12 and things, they weren't really around. And once again, it's one of those things that I always felt I was here by myself. But in saying that, not by myself, if that makes sense.
Yes, I understand.
And I think that has a lot to do with the spirit world being around and the house and the spirits that reside here.
I was just going to say, your father decided there's a whole story behind that. He decided to buy the place, or he sort of knew he was going to buy the house. Do you want to elaborate a little bit on how he came about to buying Monte Cristo? Because Monte, when he bought it, was a dilapidated building. It had sort of been pushed to a bit of rack and ruin, hadn't it?
Oh, yeah. In its day, it was a magnificent home. It had been looked after. But when the Crawleys, the original owners, Mr. and Mr. Crawley, had passed, it fell into the estate of the children. And there was a bit of bickering back and forth on what was going to happen in the house. And eventually, they actually sold off everything that wasn't nailed down, boarded up the main house. And their grand plan was to see who outlived each other. And out of the 10 Crawley children, number 9 of the 10 Crawley children, so Alphonse Crawley sold it to my dad in 1963.
Wow.
But he had to wait till all of them had passed away because some wanted a lot more money, some wanted less. But by the time 1963 had rolled around and my dad purchased it, the house had been vandalised. Squatters had got in and destroyed this house, virtually down to a brick shell. And he bought it from Alphonse for £1,000, which was still a substantial amount of money back in 1963. Oh, yeah. My dad had to borrow from 2 different banks because no bank would lend him that sort of money. But someone asked me on a tour last night, why? Why would he do this? What drew him to the house? And my dad always told the story as he was a 3-year-old boy sleeping in a tent beside the railway line because his dad was a railway worker, that one day he'd own a double-storey house on top of a hill with an outcrop of rock out the front. And kids dream of bigger and better things than their parents had and being able to achieve so much. When he first saw Monte Cristo, he brought a young lass over for dance class in Junee from Wagga, and he had an hour to fill in, and he saw Monte Cristo up on the hill, but the grass was that long, he couldn't see it was a 2-storey building, but it resonated with him as that's like the house in the dream that I dreamt about.
Yep.
So he walked through the paddock through the long grass to get a closer look. And as he gets closer, he realised it's a 2-storey building, just like the one in his dream. And as he's staring and walking towards the house, he trips over an outcrop of rock in the long grass. He eventually gets up, dusts himself off and goes, one day I'm going to own that house. And it took him 8 years to negotiate the sale to the point where there was one child left in the Crawley family and the house was in rack and ruins.
So he definitely was destined in some respect to own the place.
He believes he was drawn to the house by the spirits, that they needed someone to love this house and dedicate their life virtually to it, which my dad did. And honestly, if you look at the photographs of what Monte Cristo looked like before restoration, the work my dad had to put in, that my mum came here willingly with my dad with no running water, no electricity, no doors or windows, no nothing. 3 daughters under 4, mum 5 months pregnant with daughter number 5, and 1 kerosene lamp, 2 bentwood chairs, a blow-up double mattress, a blow-up single mattress, and a cot for the baby.
That we're basically sitting in this room.
Yeah,
right
the
now.
dining room. Yeah, this is where they
dining
spent.
room now is where it was all. That's where they lived.
Yeah, for the first 6 months they lived in this part. So
no electricity.
And honestly, people go, yeah, honestly, you wouldn't take a job like this on. My dad always joked that he used to be young and silly back in the day, and he got older and sillier by the end of it. But yeah, honestly, it's like anything. I sort of put it down to being a top athlete and everything. You've got to want to love it. You're not going to put in the hours of jogging, running, hitting, kicking, whatever you got to do in your chosen field to get to the top without sacrifice and wanting to be there.
Yes,
you just don't do it. No one's going to get up in the morning and go, oh, this is a job. Why am I doing it? Your dad would bound out of bed every day and go, wow, what can I achieve today? Yeah. And he used to only sleep 3 hours a night because he believed he had time to sleep when he was dead. So we worked out he passed at 80 years of age, and he'd lived 2 lifetimes in that 80 years because he virtually spent more time awake than most people.
Those that haven't been to Monte Cristo, it is quite an awesome place. It's got a lot of dark history as well, going back to the Crawleys and how that all occurred. There's people who, everything from accidental deaths to, probably some physical undisclosed murders potentially here and that type of stuff. So we've had a lot of different energies sort of bring themselves to the fore. And I've been on the ghost tours and I've stayed here a few times. And people say, what's happened there? Is it haunted? And I go, yeah, goddamn well right it is. But for some people, have you ever had people staying here? Give me a couple of little examples of the hauntings that may go on.
Well, honestly, my job's not to convince anyone this house is haunted.
Absolutely.
Like I grew up here at the house. I know it's haunted. I know that there's spirits around us all the time. I was very fortunate to have a parent and have a dad that was connected to the spirit world and didn't shy away from it or make it as, oh, no, that's not a thing we talk about or anything for it. And once again, back in a time where you didn't talk openly a great deal about that sort of thing, because otherwise people thought you were a bit strange or a bit weird.
Yeah.
But honestly, this house has a life of its own. And when I say the house is living, I'm not saying it's a living organism, but a spiritual living entity.
Yes.
The echo, the imprint in this house is so great, and it has a lot to do with the house being built on a huge outlay of quartz crystal, I do believe, that generates this energy that will virtually mood swing you as you wander through the house, as you walk through different events and stages of this house, and you almost relive it as a human walking through this time space.
Exactly right.
So you virtually walk through these corridors of snippets of the life of the Crawleys here and what happened here, what unfolded in each room. So honestly, when I started doing the tours all those years ago, even though I grew up here at the house, I was now in here talking and telling their stories. I'd get all emotionally wiped out. I'd walk into one room and feel upset. Next one, I wanted to fight someone. The next room, it's like, oh, I'm feeling really depressed. What do I feel like?
All the energy.
And it was, and I couldn't understand what was wrong with me. And I watch people on my tours go through the same thing. I warned them before this has happened, but you watch it, oh, no, it's all part of the tour. He's just bunging it on. It's all a show. And I said, whatever you believe, I don't care.
Work it out later.
You can work it out as we're wandering through. And each week, I watch it every week. And I've been doing this for 15 years now, doing the ghost tours here. And each week, I still get amazed of how this house reacts to people.
Yeah.
So there's everything.
That's probably a really good point. It reacts to people. Because I've been on the tours, and some people are quite okay, and some people can walk through, and other times it's a bit like the spirits, Mrs. Crawley or whoever, takes a dislike to someone or doesn't want them here.
100%.
Yeah.
And I always maintain that people that don't arrive to the house, like, they've got a flat tire, or someone got sick, or they had to stay back for work. It's almost like the house went, no, we didn't want you here in the first place. We'll make it a bit more subtle for you and not actually kick you out when you get here, but prevent you from coming to the house.
Someone's going to save your butt, really.
Oh, yeah. And that's what makes it really interesting. I find that each tour is different because the group of people are different each week.
Mm-hmm.
I had one lady came back for her 20th visit, and ever since she started coming past her 10th visit, it was like, oh, this lady's here for a 10th visit, not sure what's wrong with her, why is Kate's coming back? We're not scaring her enough. And she goes, I just love it. And I said, but don't you get sick of hearing the stories? And then she goes, no, it's like doing the tour for the first time every time again. And I said, because you bring different people with you, right? She goes, yeah. I said, that's the difference.
Yes.
Every time you bring a different energy into the house, like if you walk in with a bunch of people that are on top of the world, nothing could bring them down. You will buzz through this house like, you're on some sort of drug virtually.
Yeah.
You walk in here, a bunch of negative people, you feel like you want to go throw yourself off the veranda at the end of it because it just magnifies everything tenfold.
Yes.
So I always maintain Monte Cristo is not more haunted than another location, as in more spirits. We just have more activity, more going on.
And that's
so in other words,
the quartz crew.
Oh, yeah, 100%. And that then magnifies. So a house that was just sort of haunted is haunted, like a lot more haunted. And I get people all the time going, oh, how dare you say it's the most haunted? It's not a title that we claimed. It was given to us.
That's right.
And when you keep turning up on all the rankings throughout the world, we end up in the top 5 in the world. And that's not by us going, we've got to be the top, you've got to listen to us. It's just people coming, experiencing, and people going, no, I've been to so many haunted locations. I'm telling you, that's in the top 5.
Yeah.
So we now get ranked in any of the top 10s in the world when they're doing a YouTube or one of those sort of things for a documentary. Monte Cristo always falls in that category in the top 10.
Well, I'll share a couple of things just on camera, because as a person who stayed here, everyone has different experiences. But the first night I remember I stayed here and I'd done one of your ghost tours. And I'd driven from South Australia and I came across and then we got straight into the tour. And then by the end of it, and there was some interesting stuff going on. But I remember saying to my partner, to Lydia, I go, you know what? I'm just going to go and get into a pair of shorts. And she went off to the bathroom areas to freshen up a little bit. And I'm in one of the rooms upstairs, and you've got one of these pedestal fans pushed up, big heavy metal one pushed up underneath like a dresser. And I'm putting my shorts on, getting out of my jeans, put my shorts on just to get a bit more fresh. And all of a sudden, this thing just goes like this. Yeah, bang, 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 bang. And I'm like, huh? And you have this moment of going, oh, that's not supposed to happen. Literally that's how it was. And I sort of went, oh. So my first reaction was, hey, guys, I know you're here. Can I just sleep tonight? I'm pretty tired after driving for 11 hours. I just want to. And I did. I slept quite well that night. But we did have some other interesting experiences happen during the night. But one of the times when Lydia was here with me, and, I think it was your birthday, and we got into bed late at night, one of the rooms upstairs, and I said, oh, this is going to be fun, because I had felt this poking in my back. Anyway, halfway through the night, she's getting pulled out of bed by somebody. And she said she felt like she was one of the naughty maids. And this masculine female energy was sort of pulling her out of bed. Get out of bed, you. And she was like freaking out. And she doesn't like staying up there anymore after that, generally speaking.
As you would.
As you would. Yeah. But then I think it was your cousin who was there for your birthday, who the next morning when we're chatting, he says, oh, what room were you in? I won't say because it's giving away some secrets. But and then he explained what had happened to him in the same room. And she goes, "Oh, that's the room." He goes, "That's the room I was in." So this was Neil, and Neil's a big burly fella, and he sort of like, "Yeah, that happened to me. Scared the hell out of me." So the same sort of thing had happened, but it didn't just stop there that particular night, because we had our what do you call it, toiletries bag sitting on a dresser, and at about after finally Lydia gets to sleep and just getting back to sleep, it's about 7 a.m. All of a sudden, this thing goes bang on the ground. And we're like, wow. And I thought, what the hell was that? Woke me up. And it wasn't like the toiletries bag had fallen off and gone scattered this way. It's like it had been picked up, thrown on the ground, because everything had scattered back up underneath the what do you call it? The dresser.
Yeah.
So it had to go with some force, and it had to go in the wrong direction. So these sorts of things you can go, that's a bit strange. And then last night when I arrived here and I went on the ghost tour with you, and I was with young, I call him young Daniel, who's helping out. He's sitting over there doing all the bits and pieces, and he's been involved with filming here before. We were standing near where Harold was chained up all the time. That's another story that people can hear about. I think, Lawrence, your phone's going off. So we were standing there where Harold was, and we both heard very clearly this like a growl.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Yes. And that was unusual.
Yeah, and like I said, that's not something that we pick up a lot. We hear it at night time in the house when people stay. We hear the dog barking. That it's very common on day tours where people come back and, "Oh, you got a dog in the backyard?" No. Yeah, you got a dog. We couldn't see it, but we could hear it. We could hear the chain rattling, but we couldn't see it. So, well, that's not a dog. That'd be Harold, who loved to growl and bark.
You know who Harold is.
So yeah, Harold was chained to the cottage at the back of the homestead for many, many years.
Not while you lived there, obviously.
No. I had a funny story though. My mum, who's in her 90s now, she sits there and greets people coming into the museum, and she's a bit hard of hearing at her age, but I maintain sometimes she's selectively deaf.
Yes.
But you often hear people ask her questions, and Mum's a very proud lady, and if she doesn't understand it, she might just go into a story that might satisfy you, but not the question you asked. And it was funny. I'm not sure who was at the counter at the time for it, but a lady had asked about Harold out the back. Who was he? And Mum just went into, "Oh, that's my son. That was my son," for thinking that they were talking about my museum or, my stunt work or something like that for it.
Yeah.
And of course, the horrified look on the people's face was, "My God, you had your son chained to the cottage out the back?" And then I just happened to walk in the door. Here he is now. Probably very well adjusted for someone who was chained to a cottage out the back for 30 years of their life.
Yes.
But then the poor lady behind the counter was laughing away, going, no, it wasn't her son, it was Harold. She's misheard you for it. So they were a bit panicky after a while that they think I'd been chained to the cottage out the back.
Not a good look.
But Harold was the son of a servant here at the house. They were allowed to stay on after Mr. and Mrs. Crawley died. And the reason they were allowed to stay on, that Harold was a bit of a deterrent to any vandals or kids coming to the homestead, because he was known as the monster of Monte Cristo. He got this unfortunate title by him screaming out at night, which would echo into the valley, and howling and barking like a dog. He actually had a carriage accident when he was 8 years of age. It rendered him mentally disabled, and he broke his arm and his leg from the accident. And he had to learn everything again, but his arm and legs set incorrectly, that's distorting his body and making him hunch over. But no sooner did his bones heal, he'd run off.
Yeah.
So they started chaining him to the cottage at the back to stop him from running off and drowning in a dam, ending up in someone's chook yard or being shot. So it was for his own safety. And you got to understand, it was a common practice back in the day, especially with disabled people, because
This was only what, the 1930s?
Yeah, sort of through.
40s?
Yep.
So it wasn't that long ago in history.
No, and it wasn't to be cruel. It was for his own safety, of course. But he eventually got to the point where he's too strong for his mum to restrain him to cut his hair and his fingernails. So they just grew out. He grew a beard. He became animal-like, sort of hunched up and chained to the cottage out the back.
Yeah.
And you can hear stories from people in town that came up and looked over the fence to see this so-called monster and saw Harold chained to the cottage out the back.
Yeah.
But on a full moon night, he used to howl at the moon, which would echo into the valley of Junee. And of course, the kids sitting at the table would ask their parents, what's that god-awful noise coming from that house? And they explained to him it was the monster at Monte Cristo. And if you didn't eat your vegetables, if you didn't go to bed on time, that's where you might end up.
You don't eat your meat.
Yes. Yeah. So kids would be frightened. But we also know that parents will tell you little white lies to make you eat your vegetables, go to bed on time. So they'd come up to peek at the so-called monster, and that's where they'd be game enough and come up to a point where they could look over the fence and see Harold out getting sun.
Yeah.
A very sad story.
Sad.
He lived close to 30 years chained to the cottage at the back, and the only reason that he was discovered and looked after, his mum passed away and she hadn't been seen in town for over 2 weeks, which was unusual. The police came up to check and she'd been dead for like a week and a half at this point.
Yeah,
and they put her causes down as a natural death from a heart attack, but Harold had been sleeping next to his dead mother for about a week and a half at this point. He was 38 years of age. She was taken to the hospital, to the morgue, of course, and he was taken to Kenmore in Goulburn, the mental hospital there.
Yeah.
He lived on for another 8 years at that facility.
And that's all documented stuff.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And like I said, you can still
You've
talk to
met people come here that
Harold. Oh, yes. 3 nurses from the hospital all told me the story about how he was taken to the hospital and how he his first words muttered at that hospital, because he could talk, but he liked to growl and bark. He only would talk to his mother. And apparently when they went to cut all his hair off and, rid him of any lice and infections and things, the poor old orderly that was in charge of doing the barbering work rose the scissors up to take the first chunk out of his beard, and the first words out of his mouth, apparently, that hospital were, "You cut my effing beard, I cut your effing head off." Yeah. And the poor guy almost had a heart attack and took off down. And from that day on, Harold was used as a threat to any staff members that came to the hospital that were too big for their boots.
And Kenmore was a mental health hospital for many, many years. I say it like that. I've actually been there when I was working in another life many years ago. I went out there, and before they closed it, I think in the early 90s.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, in the early 1990s it was closed. I was part of looking after or installing duress alarm systems back then. So that's why I was associated with the mental hospitals. Not because I was deciding to hang out there for a while.
You weren't checking in or checking out.
I wasn't checking in or checking out. I was checking it out.
Yeah,
I wasn't checking in. Yeah, so it was that type of thing. But, and these are the sorts of things that Monty has a lot of. When I talked earlier in the piece about having a bit of a dark history, that's an example of that dark history, because it's not necessarily what we would consider kosher, and we also talk about, I'm talking about in today's, the way in which Harold would have been treated, just chain your kid up out the back just to keep them there. But, it wasn't necessarily a non-done thing back then.
No, very, very common. And like I said, I keep explaining to people on our tours that come to Monte Cristo is, don't think this is special to this house. This sort of thing went on all over the place.
Exactly right.
Things we talk about on the tours and things that happen here, you go to jail today for if you got caught doing it. Back then, it was almost a blind eye to what some of the things that happened.
Yes.
And like Mr. Crawley had 10 children to his wife, but rumoured to have another 10 to the staff. And people go, So, well, no, that was a common practice. Don't think that other places weren't doing it as well. Yeah. So it has a really dark history to it, but it's also a very normal history, you might like. As much as horrible as it sounds, it's just part of its history. And I've often thought, would they be happy me telling these stories? Would they be happy bringing up this past and things? But it is their story. It has to be told. Yeah. And I've been told by several mediums, they go, no, they're very proud of you telling their stories. I
would tend to agree with that. From what I've seen and just being around you on tours, I get that whole sense as well. That's me. In my intuitive psychic abilities, I sort of see. I mean, one of the things that I found when I very first came on a tour here, you were taking me through the house and we went upstairs and we went into a particular room. And I remember, whispering to my partner and going, this is where Lawrence slept. And it was your bedroom. And then you introduced later that it was your bedroom. As a young kid, that was just your bedroom. You sent to bed. But I remember you telling us a story about how, what was it? Was it a ball or a party? And you were sent to bed and your sisters had to keep coming over and checking on you and you used to wonder why you were a bit scared. Do you want to elaborate on that one? That was a very interesting story to me.
Yeah, so I slept in this particular room, the boys' room it was called, identified as in where the boys slept and the opposite being the girls. I shared that room with one of my sisters till I was 5, but from 5 to 13 I slept in that room by myself. And because there's a bit of an age gap between me and my next sisters, I had to go to bed earlier, and I didn't have the parents that brought you up, tucked you in the bed, kissed you on the forehead and said sweet dreams. I had ones that go to bed.
Yeah.
So you trotted upstairs, and as a kid, I sort of try and think back, I wasn't scared because of ghosts. I was scared because I was a kid, and it's a big, dark, scary house. And I go up the stairs and I was scared, but I'd always lie in bed and feel like someone was watching me. I just felt like there was eyes on me all the time. And I'm the type of person who dreams every night. Unfortunately, I have night terrors. I have all those sort of things.
And that's got anything to do with the house, or just you?
I'm hoping it's something to do with the house. I hope I'm not that messed up that that's a natural thing. Okay. But I think that's their way of communicating with me without scaring me, as in walking around in an awake state and seeing something and running out screaming, because I honestly probably would if I saw something like that. But in a dream sense, it was like messages. But as a kid, they're not messages, they're bloody nightmares at the end of it. So I always felt like someone was watching me, always had that sense of it. And I found out many, many years later, after I'd left that room, after I was 13, I convinced my dad that I didn't need to be in a room that was on show to the general public, and I could have a private room with my motorbike posters up and things. He was telling a story to cousins that were visiting about how they had a function in the ballroom down the back, like a wedding or a 21st. Yeah, and because I was 5 at the time, I was sent to bed, and one of my sisters brought me up the house, put me to bed, read me a story. She went back to the party. But every half an hour or so, Mum would set one of the other daughters up to check on me. So one by one, my sisters had come up and check. But the sister was closest to me at the time, so she's about 13 at the time. Yeah. She's told to go check. She's not happy about it, but of course she agrees because Mum said so. She's come from the ballroom down the back of the property, up to the main house, into the house, up the staircase, but has stopped dead in her tracks at the doorways to look in to see me asleep in bed, with an old man at the edge of the bed looking down on me while I slept. Now, of course, sheer shock and terror, the figure then turns towards her, looks at her briefly, and then just vanishes. It scares the life out of her. She races out of the room, down the back, screaming out to my dad. My dad and 2 other male relatives frantically run the house thinking there's an intruder, to find no one in the house and me sound asleep in bed like there was not a care in the world.
You had no idea that was even happening?
No.
Until you heard the story later?
Until I heard the story later. And apparently it took 3 hours to calm my sister down, who then gives a description of an old man in old clothes with possibly a beard, which I do believe was Mr. Crawley watching over me, not to hurt me, but to safeguard me from anything that might happen to me here at the house. So when I heard that story for the first time, made complete sense. No wonder it felt like someone was bloody watching me. Apparently there was, yeah. And if I'd known that back then, I wouldn't be sleeping in that room again. But I now sleep back in the main house just because I got to be down here with my mum. So my fiance and Hayley and myself sleep in the master bedroom up there. And I swore I'd never sleep back in the house. And I hadn't since I was 13 until I virtually had to come back. And the reason that
wasn't it Hayley that pushed you to do that?
Yeah, but it was almost, I always joked on the tours that if I had to sleep in the house, not that I'm going to, but if I had to, that's the room I felt comfortable in, because it has this calm peace about it.
Very different, isn't it?
And honestly, the first night I slept there, I slept the best sleep I've had in months in that room. I just slept so deeply. But my biggest fear was that I almost felt like I'd make complete circle. If I slept in that room, the master bedroom where the owners slept, Mr. and Mrs. Crawley, my mum and dad, now myself and Hayley, it'd be another full loop, and they would see us as the
new custodians
of it, and almost like those horror movies where you don't know you're dead, but you walk out the front door, suddenly in the back door of the house, because you're in that internal loop, you can't leave that area. I was almost scared that that's what was going to happen, that I'd be stuck here for the rest of my life. Now, I don't mean that in a bad way, but I've got other interests and other things in my life. I don't need to be pinned to this house like my mum and dad were. Yeah. And I think they need to understand that, when I say they, the spirits, that I can help, I can be here, but you've got to give me my little space as well. Otherwise, it's just not going to work.
For those that don't know, and we're going to do some other stuff later, but Lawrence has another life as a stuntman, a daredevil, known as Lawrence Legend. And that's a completely separate component. And that's basically where your passion lies. But you had to give that up pretty much, or you didn't have to, but you chose to because you were asked to over and over again after your father passed away. Is that right? And virtually step in and help.
Yeah, well, Dad got really sick and asked could I step in, and I was only going to fill in. Right? Yeah, he virtually, sort of cheekily blackmailed me into doing the tours, or he got better, because I was still scared of the house. I didn't want to be down here wandering around taking people through. Had no real interest in talking about that sort of stuff. So I filled in for 4 months, and that was 15 years ago. Yeah, and I did. I sort of stepped away from my stunt career to help and do this and things. But like I said, it's still my passion, it's still my drive. I'm building a museum called the Stuntman and Daredevil Hall of Fame Australia, which showcase daredevils, stunt people, stunt performers.
Yep.
And it's a passion. I love talking about people that do these amazing things and risk their life to entertain people.
Yeah. And for those in astrology, he's an Aries.
So that I love that, but I need that and this to have a balance.
Absolutely.
But it's almost like, you say that, I am a very reclusive person. I don't give out much information about me, yet I'm spread all over the internet and about Monte Cristo, about my stunt career, all that sort of thing. But honestly, I talk because I have a passion for those things, Monte Cristo and my stunt work. And in between that, it's my private life sort of thing. So there's a big balance on trying to be a private person, but also have to be in the front light to talk about these things and that as well.
Sitting here with me.
And honestly, if I go out anywhere, as soon as they find out I'm from Monte Cristo, I'm now giving a free ghost tour to someone because they want to know all the stories. Yeah. They want to know what it was like growing up there. And
so then first question I asked.
Yeah.
Because I knew that's what everyone wants to know.
And then they work out who I am in my other life as a stunt performer. My goodness, why do you do this? Why do you do that? How come? What have you done? What have you achieved? And that's great, but I don't like talking about myself. I'd rather talk about Monte Cristo than talk about myself. That's why I love my museum, because I get to talk about all these other brave souls that risk their life to entertain us. And,
absolutely.
And that gets me excited. That gets me to the point where, it gives me a new lease of life every time I get to talk about something like that. Yeah. Don't get me wrong, I love talking about Monte Cristo, but unfortunately, it's almost like I got to prove to people on a daily basis that the spirits exist.
Yes.
And I keep telling you, it's not my job to prove it. No. It's your job to believe it and take it in at the end of the day. But honestly, every interview I usually do for radio, television, newspaper articles, whatever it is, I guarantee you, when we go off air or off the record, they go, "So now, Lawrence, tell me the truth. Is it really haunted?" I was like, what do you think I've been talking about for the last half hour or whatever? Do you think I've got better things to do?
Yeah.
I do have better things to do than sit here and try and convince you. Yeah. But they honestly think it's some sort of hustle. It's some sort of thing. I've got a lot of other things I can be doing with my time and other than trying to convince people. And that's where it gets really hard because I don't want to have to convince you.
No.
You don't have to believe me. I don't care. People can come to this house and go, "It's not haunted in any shape or form. My dog kennel's more haunted than this place."
Yeah.
Well, good for you, and that's great. I don't care. You say what you like at the end of the day. But don't try and convince me that I don't know what I'm talking about and what I've experienced here at the house and what I've experienced in life in general. And the connection between growing up in a haunted house and my stunt work has a huge connection. And people often ask me, how did you go from growing in a haunted house to be a stunt performer? I said, it was pretty easy. You tend not to be scared of too many things. Stunt work seems very mild, very easy and less scary than growing up in a haunted house. But I do believe that spirit look over me and they watch after me when I perform and things because they also know that they need me to tell their story. So it's a bit of a catch-22. You scratch my back, I'll scratch your back at the end of the day.
And that's what I see it as. And the other question I had, which was a pretty big one, is that, ultimately, very soon, ghost tours here are going to stop. And that's, part of that's to do with, obviously, your mum's just getting on in age and it's her private home and she needs to spend, more time privately, I suppose you could put it that way. But also, when things move on, because your mum's in the 90s, you also, as I said, slowing down and stopping the ghost tours here in, when is it? September?
Yeah, September, yes.
September, that's 2024. So they won't be done anymore. You'll still have the place open to the public, but not the ghost tours. Is that correct?
Oh, yeah, 100%. Yeah. And honestly, it is because Mum's getting older. She needs that time. I'd like to spend some more Saturday nights with my family and things like that as well.
Go to the movies for a change.
Yeah, go to the movies, go to a car show, go to all sorts of things. But if I'm also running my museum, I need time to give that the effort it needs and talk about that side of my life as well and the passion that I have. But I don't think I'll ever stop talking about Monte Cristo because it's almost like I'm embedded into it and it'll always be a topic. Yeah. But if I feel like I'm not on the show, I'm not the focal point of having to perform like a trained monkey virtually.
Yes,
I've got all the time in the world to talk to people about that as well.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, it gets to a point where people are looking at you and judging you and saying things about you because they've got an opinion of my opinion.
Yes.
And like I said, unfortunately, everyone's allowed an opinion. Doesn't mean you have to like it or agree with it or anything.
That's right.
But I do not force it on anyone. You can like it or not. It doesn't worry me one little bit.
So what do you think's going to happen when your mum's in her 90s? There's going to come a day where she's, life decides for she to go, oh, look, I'm out of here. And you won't be running ghost tours here, and all of a sudden it will be probably put up for sale. What do you think would happen with the new owners? Like what? Seriously, that I don't even expect you to be able to answer the question, but it's one of those. Who would buy Monte Cristo, and what are they in for? That's. I don't even know if that's a question I should be asking.
Yeah, but it's honestly, it comes across my mind. Haley and I often talk about it. For the simple fact is that I know whoever sets foot in this house after our family is either going to be in for a bit of a rude shock, love it or hate it. You got to live and breathe this house, and you won't last a minute if you're not here for the right reasons, looking after this house and the spirits that reside here. So I don't care if you're connected to spirit, you're not, you read the stars, whatever else it is. You walk in here and you haven't got the right attitude, you may as well just walk in and kick yourself in the head several times and walk out again, because that's going to be the same result. And honestly, I wouldn't mind someone else taking it over and loving it like my dad, as long as they had the passion like my dad did to look after and love it. I'd be all for it. Yeah. I know, though, they'd always have to come to me at one point because people are still going to ask those questions about the house, and the only one that's going to really be able to answer them is me.
Yes.
But mind you, my museum, my house, is all Crawley land that I bought off mum and dad.
Yeah.
So it has the quartz in it. It still has the connection. But funny enough, you walk between Monte Cristo and my property, there's almost a wall. You can feel the energy.
When the energy change.
You walk onto that, it's a different energy again.
Completely different.
It's almost like there's a boundary that's been drawn to it. It's like, that's Lawrence's space, leave it alone.
Yep.
But as soon as I set foot back on that, I'm theirs again.
Yeah.
Haley will tell you the same thing. It's very unsettling sometimes, because you walk in and it hits you with a ton of brick. You almost walk in the house and it's almost you hear a collective, they're back.
Yeah. Yeah.
I can't tell you the fate of Monte Cristo. I can't tell you what's going to happen to it. I'd like to think that, I could win lotto tomorrow and, buy my sisters out and take control of the property and make it last for another 100 years, so people can come and enjoy the work and the effort my dad's put into the house, but also know about the history and the dark side of it as well, because it's all their story at the end of the day, good and bad.
Yeah, and you did mention that you buy your sisters out, because at the end of the day, when your mum passes away, you don't have anything to do with Monte. It's not in your name, is that correct?
Yeah. Like I don't financially gain from the sale. I lost my share many years ago when my dad passed away. That was through my own choice and things, so I could stay on and help my mum. But once again, I don't begrudge my sisters having their share of the house and things for it. Yep. But I'd like to think that they think that it'd want to go to someone that's going to look after and love it. And in their eyes, it's not me, though. So, yeah.
Well, that's an interesting bit of future fate to sit back and wait for, I suppose, as to what's going to happen over time. So because my feelings are that exactly the same as you, from my experiences being here, that this house commands on some level, on a spiritual level, and maybe it is to do with the quartz crystals and the fact that it's bringing that energy up and it's so strong, that it's nearly like, I can't see anyone being able to take it over that doesn't honour it. It's like they won't let it happen. That's sort of how I feel. It's like they won't let it happen. If you try and take it over, like you said, you might as well kick yourself in the head and walk back out the door.
Yeah, and honestly, I always tell people on the tours that spirit can't make you do things, but they can annoy you enough to do things.
Yes.
In other words, you got your own free will, but honestly, if your free will is, I've had enough, I'd like to leave now, they will do that. Yes. You see these horror movies, they walk in, they should have seen the signs, the blood on the wall, the howling, the things moving in the night. What family would stay there for it? But to some families, like, oh, that's normal. We can deal with that. We'll work around the blood on the walls, the things moving in the middle of the night and things. And it was virtually, as corny as it sounds, that's what it was like when Dad moved in. because they had to deal with all these things going on, the mystery lights, the footsteps down the hallways, mediums coming in going, there was blood on the walls, there's been a murder in this room, all these sort of things. But Dad's like, oh, keep going,
Okay.
keep working.
Yeah. I'm just going to fix the veranda and continue to fix the veranda.
Exactly. Yeah.
You know.
So the more I think about that is we are the cliche of a horror movie and a family that lives in a haunted house, but with the horror, but it's our home.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's the most amazing thing. Like this is your home, and it's your mum's home. I mean, ever since I've known you, I've come here, and this is where Mum sleeps. This is where Olive is.
Oh,
that and those Elvis records playing in the next room, and she's having a great time.
Well, it is. Like I said, it's our family home. Has been for 61 years, and not many people can say they've been in the same spot for 61 years.
Yeah.
And even to the point that I virtually never left. I bought the land off my mum and dad and moved up the hill. We've been a stone's throw away. I've just always been here. And it's almost like I felt like I've had to be. The land was offered to my sisters. They didn't want it. I'm the only one that said, oh, I'll buy it then, I don't have to move my stuff as far.
Yeah.
But it was almost like they went, don't you go too far. And technically, you're not moving off the land. No, technically, it's still the same land that Mum and Dad owned that they bought from the Crawley family. So I feel like they've still got that little lead on me, as in, you can stray, but just don't go too far. Yeah.
That's exactly right. So from your point of view, you've experienced your own sort of ghostly activities, I would say it in that sort of, inverted commas. What are your sort of things that have happened that you, either on a tour with certain people or have happened to you personally, that you would think would be the stand out, that you go, I can't help but remember that? Is there anything in particular, or a couple of things that might be?
Oh, of course, there's hundreds of them.
I know there's hundreds.
I'm just sort of thinking. The funny thing is, honestly, everything that happens here, it gets sort of catalogued and logged into my head, because they are all moments that you go, whoa. Even though we know the house is haunted, the rational brain goes, well, hang on. You try to rationalize everything you do and things. You try and do it. And honestly, I've talked myself out of situations where I've had an experience, but by the end of it going, oh, no, I can rationalize that. Yep. And I watch people do it on my ghost tours as well. They've had to fight their life. By the end of it, oh, no, I think it was me. I think I was just overreacting. I think I just saw a shadow and things. But the first version of it, I saw a woman walk out there. I could see her face. I thought it was one of the other girls on the tour. 2, I think it was a shadow. I was just looking out the corner of my eye, because that makes them feel better before they have to go to bed here at Monte Cristo, other than them knowing that they saw a full body apparition here at the house. So there's plenty of stories, as I said. Like,
what about you personally, though?
Yeah, but it's almost like
things that you've experienced, even something that stands out as a teenager, as a kid, or whatever. You go, boom, I remember that.
I suppose the one that obviously I talk about quite regularly on my tours and things is my nightmares as a child growing up, and taking bodies away from the house and burying them in the backyard of Monte Cristo, and waking up feeling remorse like I'd actually done it. And as a child, scared that the police were coming to get me because I'd done a bad thing, like I'd hurt someone. Yeah. And as a kid, that's horrifying. Why would you be having dreams like that? And you're talking at a time where parents didn't let you watch horror movies. You didn't watch, murder mystery, about killing people and burying them in the forest and things like that. It was a pretty, protected time as a kid growing up.
Yep.
So where are all these dreams coming from? What is it? But I think I was dreaming about, and they wanted me to know about the children that were buried here on the property that were stillborn or miscarriage from the poor old maids getting pregnant.
Yep.
And I actually had one of the most horrifying dreams as an adult, because I still have the dreams today. They're a bit far and few between about the bodies being taken away. But as an adult, when I was doing the extensions to my house, we're doing huge piers for the back veranda. And they were big 10-foot hole. Deep holes, and I was very paranoid about my children, especially my youngest son, falling in the hole and getting hurt or getting trapped. And I said, look, don't go in the backyard. I tried covering up as best, but they were coming to pour the concrete the next day. I woke up the next morning in a dry reach panic, looking at my hands because I could feel concrete on them, the feeling of wet concrete on them, running into my son's room to make sure he was still alive, because I just dreamt I'd buried him in the pole, in the fountain. And feeling like I'd done it. And I can't describe that in other than just a sickening feeling of sheer, how could you why, just all these things. Of course, my son was well and safe in bed, but I came to the conclusions virtually years later that it was one of the work hands, I do believe, buried the children that were miscarried here at the house. And he wanted me to know what it'd be like to bury my son, because I do believe, my personal opinion is, he thinks he buried his own son. Because the Crawley men would have their way with the maids. They get pregnant, they kick or punch them to miscarriage. But if that was just sex, that wasn't love, the maids would fall in love with the work hands. They'd have a relationship, a meaningful, loving connection. But if they fell pregnant to the work hand, you don't know if it's one of the Crawley boys or Mr. Crawley or who it is. So you'd still punch and kick the maid to miscarriage. And I think he honestly felt he buried his own son. And not to be cruel, to taunt me, he just wanted me, you need to understand. How would you feel if you buried your son?
That's an example, I suppose, of the energy that this homestead has. And that's the difference, and why when you talk about being one of Australia's most haunted house, but also one of the most haunted properties in the world, and that's probably the big difference. A lot of places are haunted. I've been in places and seen spirit and different things in my life, but here there is I think you described it as a magnification. It's just like it's blown up. There's a lot more energy about it. So I understand why you say, I feel like it was one of the work hands showing me, whether it be through dream state, whether it be through some other sort of psychic state. This is exactly what I went through. And so you were to know and feel and experience it.
And I think that's what a lot of our guests don't realise coming to the house, or not on ghost tours and things like that, that they're just trying to tell their story, good and bad. It doesn't matter if it was horrible things or it was something that was very loving or something. It's still a story that needs to be told.
Yeah.
And I do believe my dad, myself, were chosen to try and relay their stories in a time that they can't get through to everyone. They can't tell their story to everyone. So they rely on me. And I've done tours where I'll start choking up or I can't talk because I've altered the story in a way, not the actual story, but the way I present it.
Yep.
And they get annoyed with me. It's like, no, that's not how you tell a story. This is how you've told it this way other ways. Don't change it. So I'll start slurring my words like I've been drinking heavily before the tour, or that, I need a glass of water. It's almost like, no, do it properly. And honestly, I've been almost kicked in the backside by spirit by going, no, you're not taking it serious. Do your job properly. And it's not like, don't do it or we'll get rid of you. It's like, no, your job is to do this. And that's a big ask, honestly. I don't call myself a medium. I don't call myself, I know I'm connected to the spirit world because I grew up in a house like Monte Cristo, but I don't feel like I'm giving the director. I'm just telling their story, if that makes a bit of sense.
You're the conduit.
Yeah.
You're the person who's there to present it in such a way. And you do an awesome job, by the way. And that's not just me, pissing in your pocket.
Yep.
Yeah. But I mean that sincerely. He does a great job. So, and that's part of the experience. So what would be next? I was going to say, that was pretty much the last question I was going to ask you, and that is what I find the most fun part when I've been here, and I've been around, because when you come to Monte Cristo, and especially when it's open on the weekend, there are people going through the house all the time. So, and it's as part of a tour, whether a self-guided tour or they come along the ghost tour. But generally, there's always people here on weekends going through the place and checking it all out. And if you're here, you can't help but talk to people, or they come up and ask you. They start to have conversations with them. But what I love the most is the skeptics. They are the funniest because they come in here thinking, oh, no, I talk about it and I can sit here on camera and say, there's a gentleman here that's helping with the filming today called Daniel. Daniel came here and did filming for a month and lived here. And he came here as a complete skeptic. And now he sits there and he goes, I don't know if I really want to go back and stay there again.
Yes.
But I had to drag him in here just to come and help us for this thing, pretty much. So,
mind you, he's not staying on the property; he's sleeping at our house. Because he feels that's more safer than we haven't told him it's just as haunted as down here. But that's all right.
Poor Daniel, first night he gets here and he's sleeping down the back, and all of a sudden it's rat tat 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 all night on the window. He's going, what the hell's that? And then he's because he's got this habit of just even in the freezing cold weather, just wearing shorts. So he's wondering why these little kids are pulling on hairs on his legs, and he's picking up all the, a little bit of laughing here and there with his sound gear and other bits and pieces, going, what the hell's going on in this place? I'm only scratching the surface of the stuff that he's had to go through. But, here's a classic example of a typical skeptic that comes in going, well, yeah, I'm just going to go and do a job.
I always
and then doesn't really want to come back.
I maintain I send more skeptics away believers than I do the other way around. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So it's almost like I think it's a bit of a personal challenge to the spirits here that they like to pick on skeptics for it.
Yeah,
and the great thing about skeptics, they think different to everyone else. They're not really paying attention, and that lets their mind wander a bit. And a clear wandering mind will often pick up things going on in this house that everyone else is not hearing because they're too busy listening to the stories or overthinking everything. So skeptics love answers. They need answers for things. And when they see a full-body apparition or something happens to them and they can't put it down to smokes and mirrors or someone hiding behind the door or whatever, you want to see someone's head explode? That's the skeptic that can't get an answer for what, and they need one.
Yes.
And like I said, I've seen it many, many times here at the house.
And I've seen photographs of that have been taken, and I don't have examples here, but, like hearing kids' noises out there in the carriage area and then someone taking a photo of the carriage, and there's a child.
Oh, yeah.
Sitting in the carriage. You can see the face.
I would safely...
go, where's that coming from? That kid's not there. So
I'd safely challenge any other location here in Australia to produce more evidence than what we've got here at Monte Cristo.
That's right.
We have hundreds of photographs, and we try and debunk everything we get.
Yep.
And stuff we can debunk, but a lot of it, there's just no way. I get people to look at it. I get experts in the field, lighting experts, sound experts, if it's audio, film experts and things. And they always come back on, I'd love to tell you that you could fake this, but you can't. This is genuine. Yeah. And that's pretty cool when you get that stuff. And it's not about being an ego. I don't really care if we're known as the most haunted or whatever. Honestly, it makes no difference to me. I know it's haunted. And like I said, come spend a bit of time here at Monte Cristo. You'll soon work out yourself it's haunted.
I think to me, that's the attraction, or should be the attraction for people, is the fact that if you have what I would call a healthy skepticism, and you just want to experience or go, if I need to go somewhere, because I don't know if there's a spirit in my own house sort of thing, but you want to go somewhere where you have the opportunity to potentially experience something that's different and you can see it for yourself, then this is the place to come. That's what I say. Last night, as I said, same person, Daniel and I, on your ghost tour, standing outside near where Harold was chained up, and I'd never heard it before, and we both heard like a growl. Like a made-up growl. And I looked at him, he looked at me. You were talking away to the group. We were standing back, but we're right near where the entrance, where he was, chained up. And we both heard this growl. And I can't say, there's someone standing on the other side of the fence there growling at us. No, there wasn't. There was just like, but it was nearly like you go, huh? Did you hear that? That's how you it's sort of like it happens, and you go, did I just hear what I thought I heard? And that's literally the sorts of...
I suppose the easiest way to describe the things that go on at Monte Cristo you hear it so matter-of-factly that you don't say spirit, you say another person.
Yes.
Another person walking in the house. People outside talking.
Is there someone upstairs right now?
Yeah, you don't think spirit. You just go, well, there's someone in the house. So you go check, no one there. It's not one of those places, and Hollywood has a lot to answer for, in my opinion, on how we're sold on what spirits do and how they exist and how we coexist with each other.
Exactly.
Honestly, it is very, very much matter of fact. There's not a spooky soundtrack behind it making it things. Honestly, you spend enough time in this house, you don't need that scary background music to get you on edge and all the hair standing on your back. You just listen to what this house has got to say. And that's everything from noises to full-on conversations.
Yeah, well, even last night in this room, we were on the ghost tour, and you could hear footsteps upstairs.
Oh, yeah.
Even though you're talking, you hear this boom, 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 boom. But what's the most amazing, what people don't realise, is upstairs is all carpeted, yet it sounds like they're walking on timber floors.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
And that's where you go, well, that's a bit odd. Or someone's, as you said, scraping a chair or moving something, across the floor upstairs, and you can hear it on floorboards, yet it's carpeted.
But just to give you an example on how it does your head in, being at a place like this for it, I still second guess myself all the time here. I had a great example only a few weeks ago. We got up the next morning after the ghost tour, and we have to open up the outbuildings and things ready for the day for our day-to-day customers, but also I let the guests that have been here have free time before we open to the general public. And I was in a bit of a hurry, so I opened up the back servants' quarters, put the door stopper down to stop the door swing that, pull the drawstring, turn the light on, move over to Harold's cottage, open up the door, make sure everything's right. But I'd left the ballroom because I was in a bit of a hurry, and I thought, well, most people won't get down to there before I'm finished. I'll get there and open it up. So I'm in preparing breakfast for the group, as I do every Sunday, and Haley said to me, oh, do you want me to go out and open out the outbuildings for you? I said, oh, well, actually, I've done the servants' quarters and Harold. Can you just do the ballroom for me? Oh, yeah, I'll do that. She goes off, comes back and goes, did you say you opened up this cottage, the servants' quarters and Harold? I said, yeah, it's done. No, it wasn't. I opened it. I said, no, I opened it and turned on the lights. I know what I did because it's a pattern that I do each weekend.
Routine of opening.
And I know, she goes, it wasn't. I had to open the door, put the stopper there and turn on the light and it opened. And I'm going, no, I opened it. But then I started second guessing my own thoughts, my own action.
You're going crazy.
Because I'm thinking, no, I just thought, well, did I? Or is it a memory that it's so imprinted that I thought I did it? But I know I did. And even though we know we're in a haunted house, it still goes, no, because that rational part of your brain that's been trained to question and not believe in the spirit world, not believe in all this stuff for it from a small age is hard to fight.
Yes.
And that's why people have trouble still believing today or not accepting, because you'll always talk yourself out of it, I believe.
Yeah.
Unless you've had that experience and you've been converted. I always say it's like a reformed smoker telling a smoker to give up smoking. The smoker doesn't want to hear your rubbish. I'll keep smoking. Yeah. But the day that they make that life-changing decision to stop smoking, their life improves. They see that person and went, oh, my goodness, I stopped smoking. I wish I listened to you. But they didn't. They become that person that told them. And I find that here at the house, this is what happens. The people have had that experience, that had that connection to spirit. They now try and pass it on to someone else. And if they don't want to accept it, you'll never convince them. I don't care if you got the full body out. Until they have their time and their turning point, you're just wasting your breath at the end of the day.
Yeah. Well, I think, I wanted to say thank you for the opportunity to sit here and have a chat about Monte. We're not sure where it's going to head in the next number of years, but hopefully I'm pretty sure you'll have something to do with it, whether you like it or not, because I don't think these spirits want to let go of you just yet. I know you live next door, but I got a funny feeling even if someone buys it, they'll be coming to knock on your door going, can you help us? Because we have the spirit problem.
Exactly, yeah. I'm sure I'll be writing many books in the years to come, and I'll be still talking on stages to large groups of people about my time here at Monte Cristo, because even if I'm not here, part of my life's always been here. A big chunk of my life's been here.
And is there anything you'd like to say as a parting words? Anything that you'd like to pass on to that Lawrence Bryan wants to say, and sort of say, well, look, in my time here and, coming to a close and wanting to be here on a full-time basis, anything you want to say to people in general? Right?
I'd pretty much say that, honestly, whatever the fate of Monte Cristo is, it's already been predetermined. The fate of Monte Cristo is already sealed. If it's got me in it or not, that's where it has to go. I do believe I will be a part of it in some shape or form or whatever, but I've got to the point in my life where I just let the universe do its thing. It's no good fighting it. I always maintain that you've got a point in life from A to B. It should be a direct line if you're listening. Yeah. But a lot of people don't listen. They start to wander off the track and then wander back.
And by the time free will, because it's supposed to be a good thing.
Yes. Yeah. And then by the time your life circle finishes, you mightn't have got to that point. So they might bring you around another time, have another crack at it, sort of thing. Yeah. And I feel that this time in my life, that my purpose is a straight line to a certain degree. I've obviously deviated a few ways, but there is a purpose to it. And I do believe everyone has a purpose in life. My dad always told me that it doesn't matter if you're collecting stamps, be good at it, try your hardest.
Yeah.
If you want to be a doctor, be good at it. He even used to tell my sisters, if you want to be a prostitute, just be good at it, It doesn't matter what it is.
Great advice,
great advice.
Yeah.
And I've never maintained I'm not the best public speaker. I'm just passionate at what I do. And some people mistakenly get confused that I'm selling something. No, that's just me being passionate. I'll stand up for what I believe any day of the week. Yeah. Same with my stunt work. I'm passionate about it. I don't maintain I'm the best. Yeah, I've got a ton of world records, Guinness World Records, Australian records, but honestly, they mean nothing to me. My personal achievements of where I wanted to be has got me there, and that's what I enjoy in life. So at the end of the day, honestly, I don't care what anyone thinks about me. I don't care what they think about Monte Cristo. I don't care what they think about the spirit world. What I care about is that I'm true to my word, and what I tell you is my personal experiences, my life experiences, and at the end of the day, you can take it or leave it.
Yeah. And it's truthful, honest, and black and white. It's simple as that.
Pretty much so.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, Lawrence.
Thank you.
All right. Awesome.
Alright, so I'm recording this to test it out.
Testing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Backhand this way.
Yeah, that's it.
Backhand that way. It's just like that relative that was talking today. He's waving his arms around and almost smacked his sister in the mouth. She's like, whoa.
You can't see this on the table?
Nah.
Good. All right, so that way I can leave it
You
there.
can't really even see your hands.
Good.
Wouldn't it be?
As I said, it's more up here.
On the news tonight, 4 people killed in an accident just off the highway of 66.
Yeah. That's it.
And then they go to the break and they talk amongst themselves. You smell funny. I know, right? I know. Yeah. Did you hear about Vicky? I know. She's got the clap. Yeah. Listen, I'm Ron Burgundy.
Yeah. I'm Ron Burgundy.
And your Tits McGee.
This is live at 5. I think it's about 6. What time is it?
You haven't seen Anchorman. Yeah, it's hilarious.
Anchorman, no relation to Wankerman.
Yeah, she's not bouncy.
Yes. What's that?
I mean, just slip out for a bit, Luke. Come here. I'm going to pause.
Yeah.
Your hand. Whoa.
Oh, what the hell's going on there?
See how it's shaking? Like